Do you know about the extreme home market advantage? When something barely mediocre is praised beyond its merit only because it's made at home, and not in Yankistan. A phenomenon driven by the similar mechanics as when Yankistanis automatically hate everything created abroad. In 2012, the Mayan calendar has ended, and turn-based tactics set of mechanics saw an epochal crisis, an extreme 180 alt-right turn, a neocon rise up, a total collapse of progress, a degradation, bonfires burning the last 30 years of advancements. A combination of extreme marketing budget, riding the hype of Dunk Souls, propelled a subpar game, crippled and gimped to show it into consoles and iPads and to sell it to housewives high on wine. With the final blow delivered by the industry that is more driven by parroting, tailing and cheap clones than literal Chinese ripoffs of brand products.
Автомобильная уретра. Сначала молчишь, потом мычишь.
Removing all the gameplay from a game until it can actually fit the terrible hardware is not bad in itself. It's probably even good. Better a limited game that works than a set of mechanics absolutely unfit for hardware, like FPS and gamepad. Marketing overhyping a weak product is not that bad by itself. People get paid to do their job. And if normies believe ads, it's their choice what to do with their lives and which poison to pick. Hijacking a highly respected IP and releasing crap that betrays everything that the original stood for is nothing new. 2012 is literally the post-outlawed 3 world. And then again, all sequels are not art. You don't see Mona Lisa 2 Chris Chan's limited seasonal edition. A subpar product becomes a problem not when it is released, not when it is successful, not when it isn't criticized enough by shell-out games journals pros. As you can see, World of Warcraft is still going, and it is still not a problem to anyone. It's like the market for female pulp fiction about borderline SR romance, a healthy niche which doesn't drive the medium. A bad neoconservacac product becomes a problem when the colleagues of the creators start to shamelessly ripping it off, and do even that poorly. And none of them is successful anyway, but they still try for at least 15 years. The only time it happened with books in my life is Harry Potter, with Artyom Fall and Tanya Grotter. But did it really? That fact didn't stop other books from being written. Even the Perumov craze, Dozori craze, Stalker and Metro Fats did not send waves internationally, never influenced their respective genres. On the other hand, the degenerate iPhone designs led to our touch phones having ugly holes and blank spaces right on the screen. But we live in the end of the 20s. Touch phones is so 2010s and late. Only 30 years boomers would use them. Movies had obsession with CGI in the outs. Spider-Crap influenced only some of the animation we see of trash. Disney, Russia, China and all others continued to pump out normal 3D CGI cartoons without regressing to 1910s 12 FPS movies. But in gaming medium, the clowns who wanted to clown XSOM wiped out not just one genre, but the entirety of the mechanic itself. For years, across all the genres, we had normal action points at the beginning of the 90s. After the 2012 predicted by Maya end of the world, we returned to 70s to face in UFO clones, in TBT in general, in hero-based TBS, in normal TBS, in RPG games. Almost everything that was turn-based regressed to monkey. And in Brett, poorly designed monkey, not just a normal baboon. When iPad game XSOM was released, people who wanted UFO didn't get one. Worse than that, because of XSOM, most games in the genre devolved to 1970s combat, so many people were left wanting for something better. And in such context, a Kickstarter promised to deliver a full action points game. The end result was not we gave you a modern game. It was not even we have UFO at home. It was one of the most unimaginative blatant ripoffs that lost a half, at the very least, of gameplay features of the original. But with the context of one blade of wheat standing in the middle of scorched and salted earth, people saw this as a second coming of Chris Chan inside their paraplegic moms. Xenonauts offered more UFO than not, and that's why it was warmly welcomed. But the first game is the most blatant and imaginative clone, not worthy to be put in the same row as UFO Reboot, Extraterrestrials Platinum. Like, can you imagine something to be less imaginative than the original Extraterrestrials? The only thing going for Xenonauts was the only mechanic they did not poorly stole from UFO, and the uncommon art style of a realistic cartoon, including the crappy Kickstarter portraits that made recruits look really weird and like normal people instead of Hollywood stars, like a real Hail Mary ragtag band of extra government mercenaries.
Спасибо, Клим Саныч. Старались. Честно говоря, потраченного времени Жаль.
Да.
Пятикратно переваренный кал.
Да.
From the very beginning of the development, I say to the dev, if it's not gonna be fresh, it has to be underwater. And he chuckled at it. You can think whatever you want about Terror from the Deep. You can even say we are selling you basically the same game for the new money. But you cannot say we are literally selling you literally the same game for the new money. When you buy Xenonauts 2, you are not buying Xenonauts 2. You are buying Xenonauts. Full stop. This is not a sequel. This is the first game, again, full reboot remake. The changes are so minor, a random person would struggle to tell these two apart. And the story is the same. This is not a numbered sequel game. Not even in the 90s sense. This is just a side-grade re-release of the first game, a clone. And when you remember that the first game is already a clone of UFO. So this is a clone of a clone. I can't even say it's a Chinese Whispers clone, because it is that much similar. Even the initial 3D engine with the new graphics were abandoned, to replicate the look of the first game. Art is a food for thought. You eat art burger, you digest art burger, you shit out art burger. The waiter comes, scrapes sweat off the floor, puts it on a platter, and serves you art you already digested. Instead of using the get out of jail free card and risking the game into underwater setting, which would have allowed to sell true and right product and continue the story and the meta mythos, to provide a safe breather for the devs to try out new never done before mechanics by packaging them into a surefire release. They sat into a puddle, farted into a puddle, and then laid there to sleep. They've spent 12 years to do nothing. Xenonauts already was just an inferior clone of UFO, on the market with tens of free, paid or real-time UFO clones. Full clones, not just partial, with some mechanics. And there was the official reboot successful with iPod people. Xenonauts offered barely anything new. And for Xenonauts 2, they just copied Xenonauts. The first pseudo-sequel is already a full reboot. After playing UFO clone story, we are playing it again. We follow the same story beats. There are only a few changes compared to the original, I mean to the first clone, and most of them are changes to the worst. Instead of banking on their own strength, improving the core and fixing it, they stole and design decisions from XSOM. In the IP that exists only to be not XSOM, they are trying to rip off XSOM and its own game. But XSOM had bigger budget and was designed from ground up to accommodate the mechanics it has and uses. Showing those unwashed cheese card mechanics into a p-hole just does not really work. You love me because you hate XSOM, enshXSOM into veins. Oh yeah, people are memeing about guns not hitting anything. We should add that. We want ugly iPhone animations. Let's turn jetpacks into stupid jumpers. We want timed terrible missions. Each time it's another terrible XSOM style story mission, I get locked in with no escape or chance and have to somehow win. I have the best available weapons and armors in the game at that stage. All soldier stats are near 100. And when the game just spawns in 15 enemies who, unlike your already battered soldiers who are low on ammo, just scale to 100 armor, 100 shields, 300 HP, and I cannot do dick. Just losing one mission is not an option, because the story missions lose the entire campaign. Losing the mission means losing a 30 hours save. It's game over, and it's impossible to win properly, because if you do not kill 15 dudes in 1 or 2 turns, the game just spawns another 15 enemies, and then even more. The stupid XSOM style missions don't even end when you killed everyone, and they continue to be turn-based like Code Dostoporai, unlike Jagged Aliens 2 and Fallout, or Code Dostoporai Fun Remaster. Fucking basics, man. You have to waste time in turn-based mode just running around the entire map devoid of enemies. If you are not XSOM, why the hell are you copying its timed missions, Dunk Souls missions, Doom Clock, They even copied XSOM's satellites, which either hasten your loss or make it so you can beat the entire game with just one base. And then most of this XSOM nonsense is clearly tacked on a core that rejects it.
Look how it rejected you!
Something's wrong, Raymond! Something's terribly wrong!
I did not fiddle with the campaign and difficulty settings, I just started with default second difficulty. As always, big mistake. Always play on easy to not waste time on bad games. If a game is bad good, you can replay it on a higher difficulty later. And the game is set in such a way that all these special missions appear only once or twice, and then never again. The story missions literally do not fit with the strategic map progression wise. You get the worst missions when your recruits are the weakest, but once they are competent soldiers, you only get the stupid easy mop-ups and terror sites. And when the tactical plane is all deformed and not really working, the game doesn't just reject XSOM's 1970s two-phase gameplay, it also rejects any progress past UFO. You can take the knee, but not run at half height. You cannot go prone, and move prone either. You can't strafe, there's no flattened wrist button. The outlines behind obstacles are bad, there's no free camera. The FOV is pretty low. It is clearly insufficient for these engagement distances when you can't even see which obstacles are in the way of a mid-range rifle. You can increase it slightly with Alt plus wheel, but it doesn't remember the setting and does not always fit anyway. With the game being a blatant clone of UFO and remake of the first game, we still didn't restore all the lost functionality present in UFO but missing in Xenonauts. No financial tycoon, no Zeus, no psionics, no prisoner interrogations, no project funding or multi-trading. You can use only a big arm and a side arm, not as many arms as you want. There's very artificially low carry weight, and heavy and voluptuous stat boosters which are borderline mandatory. With all that, the drop ships have no luggage compartment. You cannot run back to restock. The tank limit is entirely fake and artificial. The original Xeno tanks are big, curvy and voluptuous. The new tanks are pathetic one-cell-sized drones. You cannot replace your entire team with them just because you cannot. The world is ending, the survival of the race is at stake, and you have an unbreakable chivalrous oath not to haul 20 fully armored heavy tanks into battle against illegal alien invaders. All tactical maps spawn you in the same corner, which makes missions even more repetitive. The only actually good thing I can name for tactical battles is that when hostile psionics are in play, instead of throwing your feeble-minded losers away, you can use a brain shield, which is a giant heavy item in the inventory. But then again, in UFO you can delegate the feeble-minded team to handle all the terror sites and small ship crash sites, and only avoid the ships crewed by psionic soldiers revealed by your psionic raider, leaving those for the Get Smart team. Then again, you can't tail UFO until it lands to get it intact. Then again, enemy psionics are very weak in this setting. With how much I hate Project Phoenix as an end product, because it sucks big donks overall, it does have an effective opening. It uses dismemberable enemy design, body parts aim, tunable overwatch, and many effective new mechanics in the genre. It actually can be turned into a great awesome game just by tuning the game balance everywhere. Xenonauts 2 cannot be turned into anything, because it's just a worse clone of Xenonauts, which is a worse clone of UFO. The core combat itself just sucks everywhere. It is not a direct clone of UFO, and I suspect it is ruined on the conceptual level itself. You start the game and you see the terrible hitboxes, the collisions with invisible things, like with utterly destroyed furniture that is not there, collisions with the air itself. The guns are fully driven by RNG, literally having perpendicular bullet spread from Cadostoparai, instead of normal distribution, preferably with soft cutoffs at sigmas. The armor is useless. In UFO, your armor saves your ass and puts you into the hospital instead of into the grave. Every time you get caught in this game, the armor does not matter. You just get one shot with a free light cop body armor and one shot with expensive penultimate alien alloys heavy armor. The enemy HP goes into the overdrive, outpacing weapon upgrades. You just rush to your lasers and upgraded them. Enemies get hit losing 15 HP per shot out of 2,500. Upgraded Gauss guns are about the same, and a direct hit with a magic grenade does like 50 damage. During the endgame fights, one endgame enemy versus your 5 full endgame dudes just stands in one place and is being fed lead until it's more metal than man. And of course, full auto is about as bad as in the real life. It almost never hits more than once, but then it feels like it does reduce damage compared to the 2 precision shots. The enemies can get staggered to sadden it. There is suppression, but it is entirely broken. It rarely works, especially with how the enemy force is composed of unsuppressible units. The most you see suppression is your own dude suppressing your other dudes nearby. Like, are you working as a team or what? Most of the game is close quarters and demands extreme volume of fire just to get one enemy. What else am I supposed to do? The stun is not working and it sucks. Stun damage only fills the gauge, that matters only when it's bigger than enemy's current HP. So it's better to nearly kill an enemy first. And that stun damage, even when it is 349 points on a 350 HP enemy, does not affect its AP. This is not Jagged Aliens 2, where your dude is entirely unarmed even after receiving 5 buckshot loads point blank right in the chest armor, but gets so beaten up he's falling and he can't get up for several turns, and capturing enemies does nothing anyway. Just get one of each, the rest is a waste of time. There's no interrogations or bonuses beyond that. They are considered junk items to be sold for cheap in a game where you get extremely rich extremely fast. Reminder, I did not play it on the easiest this time. The cover is broken. First of all, most of the cover has only 1 HP. 2 at best, so if a giant stone gets shot by a laser, it disappears. Second, the aliens almost always ignore 2 meters high cover, and when they get shot in darkness across the entire map. Yeah, light and vision simulation is another thing that doesn't really work in this game. The only way you can tell the difference between a night and a day is by paying extreme attention to the corner of the screen, where the flares appear. The game itself doesn't even look like Twilight Filter, not even like Day for Night. The primitive lighting system looks borderline the same. So, yeah. All that stealth crap is useless too. Your stealth armored dudes get shot at night across the entire map by things no one can even see, and there is no enemy spotters either. The interception is entirely broken and randomized. It is not tunable algorithm from Phoenix, not hard scripts from XSOM, not a natural mechanic from Jagged or UFO. Your interception can work or not work with no way to predict it. It can trigger on walking or only on shooting. It can trigger one ambushing dude out of entire party of ambushing dudes. The enemy interception, meanwhile, is always full, even if we've moved, and you know for sure that it will always trigger. You just cannot do anything. The aliens always retaliate, and aliens always one-hit KO your full HP dudes in advanced and heavy armor. Even if we get a drop on an alien, it will retaliate alone against 3 to 5 dudes, and the dudes are camping in the rooms. Your stun grenades, which do not lower AP, trigger retaliation, and the grenadier dies. And you have no choice. The ugly alien ships are recycled from the first game. The enemies just camp inside, and you cannot breach the ceiling, and the ships are ugly. They suffer so little damage in aerial combat that players do not even notice the tiny scorch marks, and a good blast in UFO could turn a ship into a literal pancake. The walls could be broken, the innards exposed. UFO tile design provided great freedom in approaching the subject. The enemies camping inside, put explosives on the roof, and throw stun grenades inside until the leader goes nap time. Terror from the Deep kept the modularity, but made the ships more artistic instead of the original Minecraft flying cube saucers. Xenonauts sacrificed modularity to design, and then sacrificed the design. All alien ships have the same ugly front door in the same place, and only one. You cannot even breach from multiple sides. The enemies camp in a room that can't even be breached. The only way in is a teleport, so you have no choice. The only way is to rush in with sacrificial shields which get restocked for free anyway. But since you magically cannot put a rifle on a sling, every shield turns into a naked dude with a weak pistol. The only worthy class in the first game was nerfed to death. They are still as necessary as air to defuse enemy overwatches, but they themselves are weak combatants. The pistol damage was nerfed extremely, and each pistol magazine was given weight of 4 kilograms, no matter which technology it uses. Each barb-sized grenade with weak damage was given weight of 6 kilograms. Have you ever tried to throw 6 kilograms 50 meters away? The moment you equip a shield, you go overweight by adding even one magazine. All brain shields, medkits and other almost mandatory things have weight of 12 kilograms. Have you ever seen a medkit of 12 kilograms? A damned head crocheted by grandma weighs 12 kilograms and is worn in the backpack instead of on the head, and takes up the same volume as a full body exoskeleton, which is also worn in the backpack instead of, on person. The game that sacrificed all the fun for the sake of realism instantly forgets any realism just to gimp the player, and I still am complaining about the principle of the matter, and not the game removing all the fun for the sake of challenge for underage kids. The same exact camping problem persists in base defense. You do not ever need to leave the starting room. Build a camp and skip turns. The aliens run into your machine gun overwatch. They do not break your equipment, they do not rob you, do not let your prisoners go, do not attack personnel. They just run directly at your units. You suffer no penalty for just skipping turns while aliens commit cop suicide. Even with you being magically limited to only 16 defenders, while the rest of the personnel sits and watches the spectacle. Both these situations are not fun gameplay. Breaching rooms with cheating aliens and doing nothing during much more numerous base defenses than you would want to see. Well, at least not as numerous as in Phoenix Particle. Stupid combat demands constant safe loading over every shot on the second difficulty. Many missions just lose the game, and losing an experienced soldier is basically the same as losing the game, with how fast the enemy stack scales, and how much sheer volume of fire and carry capacity matter, and each and every loading screen takes absolutely forever. Reminder, I am using 10900K, 3080 Ti, 128GB of RAM, PCI Express Gen 4 and NVMe SSD, and it still takes an entire minute or two for every loading screen everywhere. Enter combat, enter air combat, load a save, calculate auto-resolve, receive a report, everything takes forever. And of course the game artificially blocks the escape menu during the super long enemy turns. Literally artificially. officially. If you smash the quick load button, it will start loading instantly, but the lack of the menu prevents you from opening a normal save. All the mechanics can be cut out of the game. The mechanics just do not work. Armor is ignored by aliens, Kama is ignored, cover is ignored. Only the final endgame super armor can withstand one shot before death. And to produce just 12 suits, I still had to play an idle, after already being ready to kick arse. Several months just sitting on the global map, doing nothing, waiting while the big endgame, fully staffed workshops do just 12 pieces of armor. So, all that I've said, that all was happening from the beginning until almost the end game. It's like as if there's a tech level parity in the game, but it does not boost your stats, but nerfs the enemies instead. Because the same dudes with the same near 100 point stats were fighting the same 100, 300 aliens, but in the last few tactical missions, cleaning up terror sites and killing the main boss, the enemies turned into idiots. They barely could hit anything, the Overwatch was triggered only randomly, they were shooting the cover, they were dealing 0 damage to the same hover tanks, they were 1 or 2 shotting previously, they were hitting the cover instead of my dudes, they were landing friendly fire, they were getting suppressed. It's like all the enemies just magically got worse only because I reached the endgame state. There's one decent addition to the combat. You can mark the move path, press shift and see if a new position offers better hit chances. And you can even execute the queuing. But the goons always forget your pre-planned commands if they see a pretty flower or a chair in the corner, or look at this photograph and every time it makes them laugh. The AP counter on the floor is also not helpful. It shows the remaining to you, instead of how much you will spend. Maybe someone born in Xenonauts, molded by them, can get used to it, but I am born and molded by the normal games which tell you how much you will spend instead.
Tribute.
They tried to give the game a brisk pacing by reducing the number of repetitive missions you take on. First of all, most of the small crashes just convert into a bit of resources after a time. The unusual missions appear only like a couple of times and then are removed from the roster. And then the game actively punishes you for doing more than 2 crash site cleanups. Unending crash site mop-ups with long research timers is the bane of the subgenre, which is less of a subgenre and more of a number of direct UFO clones that barely change anything at all. Because only Phoenix Project, Massive Chalice, and maybe Chimera Squad is the farthest anyone ever moved away from cloning UFO 1-to-1. But this is the new word in the genre. Instead of constant mop-ups, you have to pay for the privilege of playing the game. At the same time, for the same price, you can just request the necessary resources directly. I was always saying that in this genre a no downside or a balanced cost after cleanup is good, but good as an option, not as a malus. In this game, crash sites are basically a mandatory pass. There is nothing to govern the field since all the things are just junk items, including capturing officers, and the price to play is too high. The most necessary thing you get by forcing a crash site is collecting corpses for one-time research. I wanted to say that the game had good pacing, including the weapons research, because I got to use every item instead of having to rush the final gun against the crabs. Neither was I waiting to see the new ships idling before the final mission. But even in this game, for the final mission I had to idle a lot, just to get 4 hover tanks and just 12 armors ready for the last mission. And I still went with only 3 hover tanks and 1 old tank, because it was taking that much idling. Mopping up 50 UFO crashes per day is bad. Forcing players to not play is bad. And the extended play option sounds like it was not balanced either, and will return the game to a state of constant mop-ups. If you do not want to speed up research, base building and production timers, then just lower the number of UFOs. What stops you from doing 1 per week or something? Explain that in the plot or whatever. Apocalypse did fine in the pacing department. There are only a few additions or changes to the strategic map. The game hits exactly the same UFO in Xenonauts research and technology stages. They only did not balance the cache and cam. So even on the second difficulty I had tons of it very fast. Because of that we introduced a secondary slow currency for early to late mid game. You cannot even set up a second base without idling to get the secondary currency. And it is governed very slowly, like it takes about 10 game days to set up a new base, or to pay for the privilege of cleaning up a crash site. It is best spent instead on launching the satellites, I mean assassinating and replacing failed governments. 6 gauges, 4 dudes each, at 100 to 2500 currency cost, and every spy basically takes twice that. First for assassination, then for replacement, which tallies up to you finishing the game with just 1 base unless you idle. Not touching these buttons brings the fail state closer. Touching them pushes it away so far away but even not protecting several countries does not hurt. If anything, you can launch a cheap propaganda campaign there, and once you get over the hump, the panic is barely generated. The true final boss of the game is the mid-game mission with enemy reinforcements, and it is the hardest in the entire game, after which it's just idling with occasional terror side, and the pathetic final boss fight. The game reduces the number of tactical missions so much that it significantly skews the focus towards the geosphere, and even with self-mopping up crash sites, no one will let you off the hook for aerial combat. It is significantly improved compared to the first game, even if it is barely changed. But the added complexity is not that complex, and it is way more bothersome than the simple UFO tactics, and you cannot rely on after resolve anymore. You have a flat top-down sky with no verticality, and you move your planes around. But the enemies are never inferior to your planes. If you reload many times and get lucky, it is possible to use one plane to shoot down an entire enemy squad solo with very specific tactics, but only if you get lucky. All alien cannons reload twice as fast as your barrel roll, so you have to tank every other shot. There is no option to tail and outrange the enemy like in UFO. Even if you find the speed control and try to drop it to a minimum, it's still too fast, and hostile ships are still much more maneuverable than yours. The entire tactics end up just using the best plane with the best guns. In UFO, I used a lot of starting planes with the starting long range rockets to outrange and destroy the big enemy saucers. The planes were cheap and numerous. The new shiny advanced crafts were way much more expensive to field with many across the entire globe, and they demanded rare fuels. But of course in Xenonauts you follow the code of chivalry and only field medium ranged planes 3 at a time. No more, or the enemy would think you have no honor, just like a woman. And no your other honor. All the planes but the latest are useless. Using the long-range rockets and trying to run away does nothing. The playing field has bad zoom. It's either too far or too close. There is no middle option. The GUI sucks, there is no even edge scrolling. And of course there is no escape. The auto-resolve is broken. Pressing the button gives a massive lag, while the game calculates the 6 body problem. The result is unpredictable nonsense. Even if you reliably solve the same puzzle, it can easily lose. All both squads try to run around and pinch each other's ears until the fuel runs out.
Why live the same day over and over again?
Дорогие друзья, с новым 2018 годом!
Okay, you've cloned UFO. Okay, you've cloned all its mechanics. Okay, you've cloned even its progression. But why did you have to even clone its story? Again, there are some minor additions in this one. Some minor additions. First, there's the very restrictive iPad tier tutorial, which sucks. Then the first chapter steals XSOM infiltration stuff. And then the whole same invasion you saw again and again.
Salt.
So you see, the other games they have aliens from other planets, but our aliens, you see, come from the other planets, in the multiverse of madness.
The Earth Defense Force 8 begins now. This time, the scientists managed to avoid the insane asylum. And then, he gives us the plot twist. The aliens aren't from another planet. They're from Earth, but millions of years into the future. They're not teleporting in monsters that look like giant ants. They're sending the result of millions of years of ant evolution back in time. These aliens evolved from an Earth where mankind is extinct and the world is ruled by monsters.
See, they're McDonald's. I'm McDowell's. Huh? They got the golden arches. Mine is the golden arcs. I see they got the Big Mac. I got the Big Mick. We both got 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, and onions. But they use a sesame seed bun. My buns have no seeds.
Gentlemen, I bring you more corn!
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, after last time...
This time shall be different!
Yeah, well, all right. Because I am hungry again.
It's not different at all! Is it, Steve?
It seems they hired a professional writer this time. Professional writer does not mean good writer. It only means which approach will be used. A writing created by programmers is purely utilitarian, but a professional writer craves to punch everything up, injecting personality into every scrap of information, into every line. And this writer decided to put the most cliché and unfunny and pleasant personality into everything. The entirety of the flavor texts is driven by the science guy, who was turned into an obnoxious asshole, who is not entertaining. It's like some child who grew up watching House, Wojak Horseman, and Pickle Rick decided that asshole equal funny, entirely missing the point, that an asshole's character needs to actually be written funny, like Malcolm.
It's personal. It's backslapping. It's borderline homoerotic. And you are the innocent victim.
And the other point is that Voyak, Paki and Creek and House are not good written shows, and they all ran out of steam extremely fast after the first season. The game now has a 3D engine, but it is made to look entirely like the first game. The new graphics were abandoned very early in the development. I don't get what is wrong with the non-projection of the playing field, but in rotation it looks so weird. They could have made it a normal RMB plus drag free camera, and they didn't bother with skyboxes anyway. This is not console slop, but the classic square land hanging in the void. There was no downside to a free camera. The autopsy art is very so-so. The flavor text goes like, these guys are short, and the picture shows a 3-meter giant on the table. And then it's the same intestine slop for every single picture. No aliens, just desaturated gore. Maybe that can be excused by the story, but it sure makes for boring autopsy screens. The early game, which gives you the first impression, is the worst. The starting guns shoot giant cannonballs with extremely ugly trails. It looks so bad you need to see it to believe it. The shotguns shoot 3 bullets instead of shot. And then, did you know they actually created art asset for hundreds of items, but you never see them, because they are used by NPCs and aliens. And this game makes it clear, you never need to look at the items you didn't bring to the battle. There are AKs, there are alien guns and items, civilian pistols. Why did you waste that much time and budget on nothing? Every item in UFO matters. Here it could as well not be in the game. Those pictures are not even really used during the research. The advanced weapons probably have the most cliché and boring designs imaginable even compared to the first game, which had better, less generic sprites. All GUI is ugly. It is done in the established disabled button interface design language. Every button in this game looks disabled. Why? Get help. The technical execution is not that good. For such plain looking game with weak graphics, the loading times are extremely long, and the game is forced into a letterbox, so on my good hardware it was not even running full scale, rendering just 1600 by 900 pixels. It also hard corrupted several saves in one battle, which were working fine beforehand.
Hit once on your head. Just some spittle in your face. Now what you gonna do with it? Now what you gonna do with it?
60% of my playtime it was sub-mediocre. 30% of my playtime it was loading screens for every tactical battle, air battle, report, after resolve, and safe load. And 10% of my playtime it was infuriating. So how do I grade the whole pot of 30% watered down but edible prison gruel with a spoonful of human shit dropped on top of it and thoroughly mixed? Not banning XSOM just doesn't cut it anymore. Since the times of the first game, the new granular AP games started to come out, including the Phoenix Project, which masquerades as XSOM but actually is a much more modern game than that touch phone slop or over UFO clones. And when it is not banning XSOM, it actually steals a lot from it. After 11 years in the development, it is just not
worth the wait.
YouTube discus. Пиздец.